So all the modernist experimentations in terms of the avant-gardism in modernism, the experimentation in modernism, try to change reality, try to make meaning out of reality. And this attempt is very serious, though you can think of Joyce's bawdy jokes in Ulysses, and that's why Joyce is both modern and postmodern. In fact, various traits which we find in modernist art are often considered to be on the verge of postmodernism. But still, for the sake of our understanding, we have to distinguish among them, and you can say that the thematic experimentations which begins with modernism attains its zenith in postmodernism. So even then we have to think of the very fact that there is an elitism inherent in modernism, and that is the very feature of modernism from which postmodernism tries to set itself apart, right? So all the modernist experimentations ultimately have a strong purpose of making sense of the world, changing the world for a better place. Now, postmodernism aims at undermining this grand purpose of art by being playful and comic, right? So in, for instance, The Wasteland, you will find there is a serious attempt to make sense of this enormous panorama of futility and anarchy, which is contemporary history, if you use the Eliotian phrase. In case of W.B. Yeats, you will find a similar kind of apocalyptic vision is given in The Second Coming. Or if you think of, say, Virginia Woolf, where she depicts the perils of Septimus Smith in Mrs. Dalloway. Everywhere you will find that the artist is trying to make sense of the world, though the artist recognizes that it's not possible to make sense of each and everything in the world as it used to be, and hence modernism is marked by fragmentation. It is not marked by playfulness, it's not marked by the comic, as postmodernism is marked by playfulness and comic. So by making art more democratic, so to speak, postmodernism continues with the formal experiments initiated by modernism. So it makes art more playful, more comic. Instead of irony, which you will find in modernism, you may find parody in postmodernism. So hence postmodernism tries to blur the boundary between high art, which is esoteric art, and the low art, which is popular art. So the boundary between high art and low art gets blurred. Now, this fusion between the so-called high art and low art and the corollary playfulness visible in postmodernism do not depoliticize art. Though Jameson would say that, Frederick Jameson, as I have already noted in the previous video, that Frederick Jameson would point this out, that postmodernism, because it is playful, because it is marked by indeterminacy, uncertainty, extreme amount of skepticism, it lacks conviction, and in this way it dilutes the very politics of art, that is to change reality for the better. But according to many, postmodernism, though it fuses the high and the low, it never tries to be playful. It never tries to depoliticize art. It tries to be playful, but this playfulness never depoliticizes art. You can think of Adorno's discourse of art, as he said that art gives you the negative knowledge of reality. So Adorno and Brecht, and to a great extent Walter Benjamin, all the Frankfurt School thinkers would be advocating the avant-garde, the experimental form of art, which is not very appealing all the time to the common audience. Though Brecht would try to bridge the gap between the popular and the avant-garde, and hence epic theatre is very, very experimental. Epic theatre of Brecht is very, very experimental. At the same time, it is also very, very popular. It is very, very entertaining. So in that sense, Brecht's epic theatre can be considered to have postmodern traits. In fact, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot can consider it as a postmodern play, as it is comic, at the same time it is pathetic, it is absurd, it does not give you any definite meaning. In fact, it talks about, it is all about the indeterminacy, the very comic nature of our existence, the absurdity of our existence. And in this way, it is not trying to be less playful. It is extremely playful. It is extremely comic in nature. So it is entertaining. At the same time, it is political. It enables you to make sense of the world, which is marked by the rise of fascism, the rise of chemical weapons, implementation of chemical weapons, which we find in the two world wars, the rise of the weapons of mass destructions, which we find in this world, where any time your life would come under threat. So what is the meaning of life? So this is how this very playfulness of Waiting for Godot would enable you to understand contemporary reality, though in a different way. It would be markedly different from the way in which Eliot's The Wasteland would try to make sense of the contemporary history. So according to Linda Hutcheon, the experimental use of language in postmodernism re-engages art with politics in a curious way, in a very, very interesting way. And talking about what she calls historiographic metafiction, which is a type of postmodern novel that is self-reflexive, and it undermines the authority of historical novels as well as history writing itself. Hutcheon argues that this postmodern form of fiction problematizes the accepted histories. So, history is like a narrative, according to the postmodern novel, and it is not going to distinguish between fact and fiction, between history and literature, or history and fantasy. And in this way, it acknowledges the very fact that history is always narrated by someone, and mostly it is narrated by the person who is powerful. It is narrated from the perspective of the powerful. And in this way, Hutcheon takes issue with Fredric Jameson's argument that postmodernism is reactionary as it does not have the necessary historical perspective. According to Jameson, this depoliticization of art happens because of the manner in which postmodernism prioritizes pastiche. Pastiche is a work of art that emulates the style or character of other works over parody. Parody is mimicry, something, a work of art which subverts other works through mimicry. So according to Jameson, this depoliticization of art happens because of the manner in which postmodernism prioritizes pastiche over parody. For instance, Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, which was published in 1981. This is one of the most significant works of the canonical British writer of the South Asian diaspora. We can find certain songs from the popular Hindi movies of the late 1960s. So this is how he fuses the high and the low, the high form of art, esoteric art, which requires erudition, and the low form of art, which is considered conventionally to be the low form of art, the Hindi songs, the popular Hindi songs. So to illustrate the theory of Hutcheon on fiction and history, one may also refer to the multiple conclusions to the narrative in John Fowler's The French Lieutenant's Woman, which was published in 1969, another very, very interesting novel. By offering different endings to the narrative of Charles and Sarah, which is set in the Victorian period, the French Lieutenant's Woman seems to project history as a series of multiple narratives which often problematize each other. So you have 2-3 endings to the novel, and this is how the French Lieutenant's Woman tries to tease the conventional apprehension of the reader, the conventional perception of the reader. The reader ultimately does not get any well-defined ending to the story that the novel narrates. Instead, the reader may delight in the play of plurality and intertextuality, which other close-ended texts suppress in order to follow the conventions of history writing. So other texts would try to suppress the plurality which is actually present, which is always there in reality. Reality is plural, reality is multifaceted, it is varied in nature, and history writing tries to suppress that plurality, suppress that intertextuality, where always a text becomes the origin of something. In fact, according to postmodern ethics of art, you do not have origin of anything. There is no origin at all. Everything is a copy of something else. Now, as the contemporary American critic Brian McHale argues in Postmodernist Fiction, a book which was published in 1987, postmodernism deals with ontological questions as modernism deals with epistemological problems. In other words, modernism engages with the ways in which one can construe coherent meaning in the world of chaos, the way of knowing human life, while postmodernism doubts the very notion of human life and the world. So according to modernism, we can construe meaning in this chaotic world, and hence it is about epistemology, how meaning can be generated, while postmodernism tries to cancel this very idea of meaning generation by questioning the very tools of not only the tools which you are going to use to generate meaning, but also the very nature of reality itself, as we do not know what is real and what is not real. So postmodernism would doubt the very notion of human life and the world. And in postmodern art and reality are not different or cannot be distinguished. Where the world of art stops and where reality starts, we do not know in postmodern art. As we find in expressionism, there is a tendency to represent reality in a distorted way. It generates a meaning. Still, it generates a meaning, and expressionism is associated with modernism. It emphasizes subjectivity as it mutilates the objects of representation in order to suit the mood of the artist. Now, nevertheless, this subjective perception seems to conjure up a meaning. So always there is a meaning in modernist art. Again, imagism tries to be minimalist in expression in an aim to concentrate on a particular image. Yet, it cannot be denied that the images seek for a particular meaning, something that has a truth claim. Now, this very pursuit of meaning might be considered as an epistemological endeavor, as it deals with knowing the world. So, modernism is all about epistemology. However, in postmodern art, one finds misreading, indeterminacy in everything. It not only questions the validity of its artistic conviction, that is, the strategies of representation are constantly under scrutiny, but also through a fluid, self-reflexive, unreliable narrative subverts the validity of the world that is believed to be external to art. Therefore, reliability of art and being of reality, the very being of reality, come under examination, and this very pursuit of postmodernism might be considered to be ontological. So, for instance, in Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, the central crisis of the protagonist Salim Sinai is his inability to hold his body together, and this central crisis evokes the crisis of the narration itself. its inability to be coherent and reliable. So the novel cannot be coherent, and at the same time, Salim Sinai, the narrator of the novel and also the protagonist of the novel, cannot hold his body together. His body is falling apart. And this very crisis to hold things together, to be coherent and reliable, is also encapsulating the crisis of India, the nation state, which is its inability to come to terms with the diversity of India, the nation. And Salim's fragmented body calls into question the administrative strategies adopted by the powerful leaders of the state, which led to the violence of the partition of 1947, the Indo-Pak War of 1965 and 1971, and the state of emergency, which emerged in 1975 to 1977 in India. So this is how Salim Sinai's apparently personal crisis becomes very, very political in nature. Hence, in the beginning of the novel, Salim significantly proclaims, "I had been mysteriously handcuffed to history. My destinies indissolubly chained to those of my country." So there lies the connection, and that is why this proclamation becomes very, very significant. And in this way, the postmodern fiction erases the distinction between the real and the fictional, between the personal and the political, bringing reliability of art and existence of the so-called reality, which is conventionally considered external to art, under scrutiny. So this is the most important trait of postmodern fiction, postmodern art. Here are the references that you can get hold of. The books that are mentioned here have been helpful in preparing this material. Thanks a lot for watching.